Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman, and I'm happy to have you join us today on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This show is for those wanting to learn more about financial wellness, how to create it, and we're going to look at different life cycles and explore them both financially and emotionally. Remember, when we make decisions, they come from an emotional standpoint, even though we want to think about them logically. The better prepared we are emotionally, or the better we work through the issues, the more sound financial and other decisions we're going to make. So obviously, very important to prepare and look forward. We are going to be general in our discussion, but we'd love to hear from you, make it more relevant and more personal. So please reach out to me through my website. That's lifecycle.financial. Again, lifecycle.financial. Or you can post your comments and questions on Facebook, YouTube, or the other platforms that we're on. We are going to be discussing a few things that may be state-specific as we go through. So please, obviously, depending where you're living, double-check these apply in your state. But the information that we're giving is always relevant, and then it's for you to make it more personal for your situation. Because going through divorce does have a lot of moving parts, and it's not always an easy situation. Add to that a situation like Coldplay, and there's a lot to cover. What can we learn from a situation like that? Do you think his wife, Megan's reactions were appropriate? There's much to contemplate as you go through a divorce and as you prepare. And we are lucky to have Karen Covy joining us today to navigate a lot of the process, the nuances, and sometimes the complexities of all of this. So thank you. Thankfully, Karen, as I said earlier, has become a frequent flyer on the show. She's been on several times, which is wonderful because of her insights, her demeanor, the grasp of the process. And just to give you a sense, I'm only touching on it, but Karen is a certified divorce coach. She's a mediator, in her words, a recovering attorney. She has an array of wonderful information on her website. She's an author, podcast host, course creator, fantastic resource. And Karen, if I missed something, forgive me on that. And it's wonderful to have you back on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Hirsch. You know I love our conversations.
They are always exciting, and I always learn so much. So yes, I am always excited to have you on. The first thing I think for people to understand a little bit, your background, as I said, I flew through that in, 10 seconds. But give the listeners a little bit more about your background and your experience, if you would. How did you come to, the passion behind what you do?
Well, I've been an attorney for more decades than I care to admit to. But I was practicing family law from, about 1995 on. And one day I was in the office with my secretary and I was talking with a client. It was hot. The door was open. She heard the whole thing. And after the client left, she said, no one else does that. And I was confused because she had worked for all the big guns in the city. And so she was familiar with what lawyers did and didn't do. And I said, what do you mean they don't do that? She said, you sat down and you explained everything to the client. Here's your choices. Here's your options. You can do this, 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 or this. What do you want to do? And I said, well, if people aren't doing that, what are they doing? And she said, here's a contract, sign here. And I was shocked and flabbergasted. And I realized in that moment that there's a gap between what lawyers do and what people think they're going to do. And divorce touches so many different areas of your life. To think that one professional, any one professional, is going to get you through all of those areas is crazy. Yet that's what we do as human beings. So that sort of led me into coaching, because as a coach, I can help people direct all those different areas. I can help them put together the team that they need to get through their divorce with less conflict and less expense. So that's what I do.
I love what you said there, because I do think I run into this all the time with my clients. They walk into an attorney's office and they think they're going to take care of me. They're going to take care of everything I need. And no knock on the attorney, but they got 30 other people thinking that as well. And they don't always know exactly your situation. And really, this is your life. You're the one that needs to take control of the outcome in many ways. And becoming educated is important. How do you do that? your professionals are a big piece of that. I just think there's a lot of, I've got an attorney, I'm going to be okay. But the attorney is one piece of your team. I've had clients come to me and say, I've got this MSA, can you review it? Does it make sense? I don't understand it. So I love that approach. And I know you've taken that into your coaching, that whole approach as well. So I think that's huge as well for people as they come in and come through your doors.
100%. And I know when people hear the word team, they start to freak out a little bit. Because what they're hearing is dollar signs, right? Like, right. Oh, I got this one and that one, the other one. But if you're using your team properly, which is something I help clients do, then you are only paying for the services that you need, and you're getting them from the professional who has the expertise in that particular area. Using your lawyer as a therapist is very expensive, and they're not good at it, right? Using a divorce financial advisor can be super, super helpful, gets you a deeper level of expertise. And again, they're going to be less expensive. So it's about putting together a team that you can use in the right way.
So, and I love that. I'll give you an example that literally happened to me yesterday. I was speaking to a client company, big company, the husband's been there making very good money, been there about 26 years. And I'm looking at everything and I said, I don't see the company's pension plan on that. They didn't even think that there might be more than one pension plan. There's a 401k, but there's also a non-contributory. So getting the right professional can really make a big difference. And I say it seems counterintuitive. So thank you, Marty. I appreciate that. Very, very nice of you. But building your team, it's counterintuitive, but you're going to get a better result for less money or cost.
Yeah, exactly. But people don't think that way. And of course, a lawyer isn't going to necessarily encourage you to do that, because that means less money in their pocket. Some lawyers will, no matter what, and others won't. But it's important for you to understand that this is an option and to know what your options are. That's why I like to say to my clients, I'm making you the CEO of your divorce. Yeah. I'm putting you, and you can use whatever analogy you want, CEO, quarterback, you're the leader of the team, right? And I understand you might not have wanted that job, but you're the one who's got to do it. It is not your lawyer. All they do is take care of the legal part.
And I would say the bottom line ultimately is the result is what you have to live with, not the attorney, the CDFA, the divorce coach, no one else, you. And that in itself should kind of drive the point. But we got to get to our topic. So, we're going to dive in with a question. Obviously, Coldplay, Astronomy, what does this have to do with divorce? How does it impact divorce? And the obvious question that comes up, the biggest one I think that people are asking probably is, how does infidelity and, I guess, nationally embarrassing your spouse play into the divorce proceedings?
Well, it doesn't start them off on the right foot. Let's just put it that way. I mean, talk about, poetic justice. These people are in a world of hurt. But in terms of how does the infidelity itself affect the divorce, in most states, the answer is not so much. Just because your spouse was cheating doesn't mean you get more of the marital pie, doesn't mean they don't get to see the kids, doesn't mean, their infidelity doesn't necessarily make them a bad parent. However, with all of that said, if they spent money, if the CEO spent money on his affair partner, then that is known as, it's different words in different states. It could be called dissipation. It could be called wasting. But the bottom line is you can't spend marital money on some tootsie and have that just not count. You're draining the marital estate by that amount of money. And so whatever he spent on her can be added back into the marital estate and divided equally, right? So that's the biggest way that the infidelity could affect the divorce, except there's one other exception in certain states. If he was the one who needed support, which is clearly not the case, at least not before he gets divorced. But if you're the spouse who needs support, sometimes infidelity can affect you. If it's your infidelity, it can affect your ability to get support from somebody else, from your spouse.
And I think this is so important for people to understand, because emotions can be the most expensive part of your divorce. I tell every single client of mine that. But where that plays in is, I want to make things right. I want my pound of flesh. I wasn't treated right. Unfortunately, really does not play very heavily in most states. And yes, in situations like this, you weren't treated right, and things are not, hunky-dory, and it's embarrassing. And I agree with everything. But unfortunately, from a legal proceeding perspective, it really doesn't play in. And that's something that's so important for people to understand. It's easy for somebody, you and me, to say, you've just got to get through that and get over it, kind of thing. But going through it, it's hard. And we do recognize that, but we've got to bring that reality into the situation as well.
Yeah. And, no matter how hard you have it, at least there's not a viral video of your spouse and somebody else all over the internet, right? I mean, his poor wife, Andy Byron's poor wife, I can only imagine everything that she's had to deal with since this incident went public.
Well, and I must say, I mean, we'll get into it a little bit, but I do think she's handled it very, very well. A lot of people, could be putting things out there, talking negatively. But I'm going to ask you to put yourself in her situation. What's the first thing you would suggest she had done if you were her friend or advising her through this?
One of the best things she did, just given the nature of her situation that everybody knows, right? So one of the best things she did was take down her socials. That is, I mean, I can only imagine how inundated she would have been, and with all these helpful tips, but you don't need the peanut gallery in your ear. You've already got enough problems, right? So the fact that she took down her socials was a really, really good move. And what you want to do in a situation like this is not react, but act. Stop, step back, think, use your brain, right? And yes, you want to jump in and just probably choke your husband. Like, what were you thinking? And you're devastated, and you're, especially, I don't know if she had any inclination that he was cheating, who knows? But she's dealing with all of her own emotions. When you're so emotional, that is not the place to take action from. You want to take a step back, stop listening to all the noise around you, get quiet, get a few trusted advisors, and start thinking about, what do you want and what's the smartest right next step for you.
100%. I think that is huge. I agree. I think the first thing, taking her social media, I can't even imagine how many people must have tried to find her on social media in any format to reach out to whatever, just, again, I think that was a very smart move as well. And again, regrouping, right? I've got to believe her world in many ways was shocked. Even if there was an inclination for it to come out in that fashion, wow, that's a sledgehammer. That's a very difficult one, and I guess along similar lines, right? Once the divorce procedures are moving, or proceedings are moving forward, talk a little bit about, starting to date. How does that play in? Does it play in? What are things that people should consider, I guess? Because can't imagine that relationship is going to stop dead just because it became public. Clearly, other people knew about it because there were people from work that were at the concert next to them. So it was already known. Talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, that just amazes me. I mean, just given Kristen Cabot's position as head of HR, the irony of that is mind-blowing, right? And that there were other people from the company, at least one other person there who clearly knew what was going on, says that they had a level of uncaring. I mean, they were so cavalier. They were so sure of themselves, because look, anybody with a half a brain knows that's a bad situation to be in. You don't want to be the CEO dating the head of HR. Like that is, there's no world where that's okay. And yet they were doing it and other people knew. I mean, that's the mind-blowing part, is how arrogant they were to think that they wouldn't get caught. I mean, I just, like, you just don't do that.
I was blown away by that. I mean, that is, you walk into a company as a first day new grad out of college and you can figure that one out, let alone being the CEO. And from both sides, right? It wasn't like, oh, he's the CEO, he should know better. She's the head of HR. She should know better.
100%.
It was both of them, and they're both in extremely high leadership profile, out there positions. It's not like they squirreled away in a basement and nobody even knows about them. They both had very high exposure within the company as well. And yet it seemed in the company to be accepted and okay. People were socializing with them doing it. That really was staggering to me. That really did blow my mind.
Yeah, and I look at the woman, Kristen Cabot, and she should have known better, but her career, like not just that job, they both lost their jobs at Astronomy. Right. I think he resigned. I don't know if she resigned or got fired, either way. But her career is pretty much over. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Like what company is going to hire her to be head of HR now? Like it's never going to happen. He has the potential of regrouping and moving on, I suppose. But this has got to be really devastating for her. And let's not forget, both of them, I think, were married, right? I've heard conflicting reports about her, but from my understanding, both of them were married to other people. And so now you've got two careers and two families completely imploding.
Yeah. And just talking about dating, I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit here, but, you're in a situation, especially if you're going through a divorce, you need to heal. There's a lot going on. And you need to understand that to me is one piece of it, right? What's your spouse going to do with that information? Or what happens if you have kids, especially in a situation like this, where, how many billions of people are on the internet, and your kids, the devastation to them, going back to school or walking into a friend's house, and what are they doing? They're watching the video of your dad, right? There's so much work to be done before jumping into another relationship for yourself. I'll talk about me for a second. I was married for 20 years. And when I got divorced, I can't say I really even knew who I was anymore. And I had to really regroup on my own. Like, who am I? You give yourself over to the kids. You give yourself over to the coupleship. And you're not the same person as you were 20 years ago, for sure not. And now you've got to understand, like, what brings me joy, and who are my friends, and, what am I going to do with my life? How am I going to make a difference, right? I mean, I hope that what my career change into working with people through divorce was a positive catalyst that came, or the divorce was a catalyst that was positive in what I'm doing now to help other people. There's just so many things for you to do. My very first blog, I think I've shared this with you in the past. My very first blog I ever shared, got picked up and was shown, was, I called it "Divorce is Awesome," right? And everyone's like, you can't call it that. And I kind of wish I had still called it that. I changed it to "Perspective is Everything." And really, my life in many ways had died a horrible death, excruciating in many ways. And, there was a mourning that needed to go on of what could have been, or the kids and everything that comes with that. And then I realized there are a lot of opportunities. But if you're jumping straight back into a relationship, or you're just ignoring the work that needs to be done, you're bound to end up where you are today, right? And you just got to be very, very careful with those kind of things. So
100%. And I'll add, from the legal perspective, I mean, there may not be technically a legal consequence to your dating while your divorce is going on, but from an emotional perspective, it's it's a really horrible idea, because all of a sudden it flares up everybody's emotions, right? Nobody, because your spouse is going to perceive it, and technically they're right, as being cheated on, right? And so it just complicates the legal end, not necessarily legally, but from an emotional standpoint. Now, all of a sudden, that settlement that you almost had just blew up. That spouse that you were getting along kind of okay for exes, not happening anymore. And so you just made your life enormously harder. Your divorce take longer, cost more, all the things, simply because you couldn't wait until after the divorce was over before you started to date.
I love that. That's good way to end the first section of the show. Before we go to a break, though, share how people can get in touch with you, if you would.
It's really easy. I'm at KarenCovy.com. That's KarenCovy.com. You can connect with me through the website. You just go to the connect button, and I'll, submit your question, and I'd be happy to get in touch.
And I recommend, even if you're not ready to speak to somebody, there's a lot of great information out there on KarenCovy.com. There's courses if you want to take some courses. There's blogs. There's tremendous information just to get you acclimated to what's going to happen. So I would suggest, whether you're reaching out or not, start with the KarenCovy.com and go from there. And we will be back in about 30 seconds. Don't go anywhere. Hello and welcome back to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. And today I have Karen Covy on as my guest. We are talking about Astronomy, Coldplay, and divorce. And we covered a ton. I was scratching as much as I could down to try to recap the show a little bit, but let me see if I got some of it or most of it. Karen shared her background, had a bit of an epiphany from one of her assistants that people do things differently than the way she was doing her family law practice, and realized how the desperate need, I guess, really for people to get educated, coached, and kind of have their hand held a little bit through a difficult process, and has transformed a little bit into coaching and strategy for divorce. I know those are your words, those are more mine. We started off also talking just a little bit about infidelity, the impact, we didn't really use the wording of no-fault divorce, but I believe every state at this point is what's considered no-fault divorce. It may still play in different ways. As you had said, it can complicate the issue. It can heighten and elevate the emotions around the other spouse, which can make the whole process more difficult, more expensive. There's a lot of things that play into that. We've spoken a little bit about dating, the kind of mind-blowing of being so bold and brazen in those actions. And it doesn't have to hit the internet in, turbocharged viral status to kind of be seen by others. People do talk, and just being so brazen, I think, can be very, very dangerous. Not that I'm recommending even do it on the side or do it, in hiding. I'm not encouraging that at all, but just understanding what you do does have consequences. And obviously, I guess is the perfect lead into, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about social media and the potential dangers that come with social media, and how once it's out there, it's out there. You become a little bit of a social media maven, but I do want to read something from Megan Kerrigan Byron's Facebook page, which I have to compliment her. I think, she has been firm. She has made statements, but nothing disparaging or, I'm here to fight. they're not fighting words and all the rest. And, I just want to read a little bit of her kind of official statement. And it does say formal statement by Megan Byron, wife of Andrew Byron, for now. And then she says a couple things. Let me be perfectly clear. I'm not issuing this statement in defense, nor in heartbreak. I am issuing it in power. And I want to come back to that a little bit in our conversation. She also says, I'm not spiraling. I am ascending. We spoke a little bit about that, the opportunity. And, to those who expect tears, I don't cry, et cetera, et cetera. She's got some very positive messages in there and empowering messages for other people going through something similar. So I'm going to ask you, just talk a little bit about online presence, what to avoid, when going through a divorce, things like that.
I would avoid a Coldplay concert. I mean, that's just me. But I mean, more so, sorry, I couldn't resist that one. But serious.
Beautiful. No, beautiful. I love that.
But that's the thing. We live in a digital world. Everybody is connected, and you just never know. You never know when someone's going to have a random camera and take a picture. Now, yeah, you may not end up on the Jumbotron, but let's say, if you're cheating, having discretion is so difficult today. You go out to dinner and you're sitting at a table with someone, having dinner with someone who's not your spouse, and someone else takes a picture of something randomly, but you're in the picture, and they post it on their social media. And it sounds like a far-fetched scheme, but you wouldn't have expected to end up on the Jumbotron either. So it's like you just never know today. Yeah. Who's going to see you, who's going to take a picture, where something is going to be posted, what people are going to say. So using discretion makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, I should say, starting, at the very beginning, don't do this stuff. Just don't, you shouldn't be doing it. But if you're going to do it, don't be stupid.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate, Karen and I are certainly not saying, oh, if you do it, it's okay. Just do it on the side and don't let anyone see. We certainly are not saying that. I want to be very clear on that. But social media as a whole, and as you said, you could be in the background, and it could be a family photo at a restaurant and you happen to be the table behind. It really doesn't matter. I mean, you just, the longevity of the internet is number one, right? It depends, what you do on there. You can use it very positively, but again, it can be very, very damaging. And I just want to touch, as I said, I wanted to come back to her statement because I have tremendous respect. I cannot even imagine what's going on inside of her and the emotions inside of her. But to be able to say the things like, I'm not spiraling, I'm ascending. And the hope, I hope that gives other people who are going through this situation. You can spiral. You can be the poor me, look at my life. Or you can say, I'm going to be strong. This is, something that does not have to be my defining moment or what puts me down. Think about it from this perspective as well. The role modeling that you have for your children going through adversity. Are you going to be that person who's a jerk and mean and always, derogatory to their other parent? Or are you going to role model, adversity is very difficult, but you don't have to spiral. You can really go through this with your integrity in a way that can be one of the best learning experiences for your children even.
100%. I mean, we could be seeing a very different response and reaction from Andy Byron's wife, Megan, right? Yeah. She could have gone the vindictive route that I'm going to take him for, and mind you, human beings being human beings, everybody would have loved that. The internet would have ate it up, right? Yeah. Gone crazy. But what would that have done? It would have kept the issue alive. It would have kept her in the center, actually thrust her deeper into the center of the controversy, right? And it really would have served no purpose. But she could have taken that route. She could have gone the victim route and said, poor me, poor me. She could have come right out of the gate and immediately filed for divorce with big numbers in the petition for dissolution. I want everything. I mean, she could have taken a lot of different paths, but the one she took seems to be one of step back, think about, okay, as you said, how are my kids going to view this behavior, 10 years from now? I mean, their world has already been shattered, right? They're already affected. Their idea of their father had to be dramatically changed, right? And so they're dealing with all of this stuff to begin with. And to see the way their mother reacts and responds is huge, right? So I think what this illustrates, no matter what, is that she had a choice. And the choice that she made for how to handle this situation moving forward determines what happens to her, what happens to her kids moving forward. And she, as far as I can tell, is taking the high road. And that's always a good choice, always for your kids.
For yourself as well, by the way. I think, you can become a person who is mean, and you can become that depressed person and that person that kind of nobody wants to be near, right? As opposed to somebody who I'd much rather be with somebody who empowers me and shows a strength and shows dignity and integrity, right? I think those are the kind of people I want in my life every day. And so illustrating that and who she can become through this, the inner strength that she might not even realize she had, being able to restrain herself. I would have to restrain myself in that kind of a situation for sure. I just have tremendous respect for the way that she has responded to the whole situation all in, quite honestly.
I agree 100%. And I think that, what she's doing makes so much sense, but it takes so much self-restraint right now. And mind you, she had the sentiment of the entire world is on her side, right? Everybody was with her. So it would have been very easy for her to go down the victim route of poor me, or the scorned spouse, or like whatever she did, everybody was going to understand.
Yeah, 100%. And would have supported her reaction because of the situation. Yeah. There's no question about it. Unfortunately, we got to wrap up. There's so much more we could speak about on this topic alone. But, Karen, one of the things I mentioned earlier, you always have, whether it's a new book coming out, whether it's a new class, always wonderful information that people can get. And anything you want to highlight, anything you just want to say, when you go to my website, hey, check this out because it will really be helpful. Anything like that?
For most people, I've got a couple of things cooking, but I'm not ready to spill the beans. No, I can't spill the tea just yet. Yeah. However, everything is always on my website, which is at karencovy.com. You can see there, there's 2 programs. I have 2 online programs, one for getting through a divorce, one for preparing for mediation. There's a podcast. There's a blog with over 200 articles on it. I have a YouTube channel. I'm on TikTok. I'm on all the socials. So I am everywhere, but the website is the hub, and that you can find at karencovy.com.
I encourage everyone to go and you mentioned too, I just want to highlight one. So many people do not go into mediation with a game plan and a strategy and thinking through what they need to. That is essential. You cannot do it under the pressure and emotion of the negotiation. That course alone would be worthwhile looking into and going to karencovy.com and seeing that. I encourage people to go, as she said, more than 200 blogs, all good information as well. Karen, it's wonderful to have you on the show always. And when we not on the show, it's also wonderful, I will say. I am Hirsch Serman, your host of the Financial Wellness Hour. I really appreciate you joining us today. I encourage you also to go to my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. You can reach out to me with questions. Obviously, if you didn't catch Karen's information, you can reach out there as well, but it is karencovy.com. And thank you to CC Schatz behind the scenes, helping us just have a wonderful conversation to learn, help others learn, and I appreciate it and look forward to you joining me on my next show. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks for joining.